The following is a demonstration of the Stakeware technology to help law enforcement manage public trust and implement the practice of community policing. Community policing means working in a proactive partnership with citizens to identify and solve issues. The problem is that managing stakeholder trust is difficult because there are many different stakeholder groups, each with its own particular needs and perspective. Stakeware offers a contingency framework that identifies which dimensions of trustworthiness are most relevant for which types of organizational stakeholders, and enables a proactive approach to stakeholder engagement. Engagement done well is like a savings fund. The value adds up over time and acts as a cushion in times of reputational or fiscal distress. Organizations that are more aware of stakeholder interest are more likely to avoid crises because they are better able to anticipate risks and opportunities. So let me show you how this works. We start by looking at our dashboard, that is comparing patterns identified in internal law enforcement data with patterns identified in social media data. In this case, we use as an example data coming from the Seattle Police Department. The first thing to notice is that the data is organized by neighborhoods or beats, and by type of social network that we're analyzing. On the right, we get a trends analysis on the volume of mentions related to the key issues of concerns to the department. For example, take the issue of racial bias. On September 21st, it was trending at a very low volume, but then, in a matter of days, it climbed significantly, and by September 24th, it was at the highest level for any issue in our analysis. Now, if we shift to a different neighborhood, the situation changes completely, as you can see from the following graph. There's different patterns in terms of the issues and intensity of the topics, as well as which topics pertain to each one of the issues, as we can see on the word cloud on the right. In terms of combining this information with social network analysis, we can look at the diagram on the left, which provides a bird's-eye view of the networks of stakeholders. Often, the purpose of social network analysis is to identify the most important or central node in a network. How important or central is defined varies, but it's usually based on the number of types of relationships an organization or person has. Also of interest is the ability to recognize subgroups or subcommunities within a larger social network. As you can see from this particular diagram, in this case, the National Criminal Justice Association is a very influential stakeholder, with a high degree of centrality and a number of links. We can also identify the major subgroups associated with that stakeholder. This means that if we're able to shift the relationship with the central stakeholder, then that can have propagating effects on the network. To recap, thus far, we have identified the volatility of the issue of racial bias, as well as the influence of the National Criminal Justice Association. Finally, if we scroll down, we are able to see the convergence of negative and positive tweets compared to the incidents and 911 calls. The goal is to be able to identify patterns that can ultimately help in allocating resources and facilitate a proactive engagement. Let's look, for example, at the past few weeks. There is some level of correlation in terms of the volume of positive tweets and the lower volume of 911 calls. Now, let's remember that these are tweets that are specifically talking about the police or a police-related issue. So, armed with these insights, let's plan an effective engagement campaign to mitigate the risk associated with the issue of racial bias. For this next step, I'm going to click on the stakeholder knowledge map. The first three steps of any type of stakeholder analysis are to identify stakeholders, classify them into meaningful groups, and prioritize them. The following framework is designed to do just that, by focusing on two dimensions of stakeholder relationships. While stakeholders may differ along many different dimensions, for example, the degree to which they have power or legitimacy, we follow the lead of network theorists who study organizational stakeholders in focusing on A, the degree of interaction between stakeholders and organizations, and B, the structural positioning of stakeholders vis-a-vis the organization as critical determinants of stakeholder influence and organizational behavior. The first dimension is depth on the x-axis. Depth is a measure of the extent and intensity of a stakeholder interaction with an organization. The second dimension, which we call locus, captures the stakeholder position, internal versus external, vis-a-vis the organization. Both of these dimensions have firm grounding in the organizational trust research and stakeholder theory. In addition, we take into account the different dimensions of trustworthiness that can be classified by the KPIs on the lower left. Depending on which quadrant we analyze, the weight of such metrics may change. So, for example, when we look at low intensity stakeholders that are external but that have a low intensity of interaction with the organization, the two most critical dimensions are technical competence and integrity. If we click on technical competence, you will see that the KPIs are all associated with crime data, number of arrests, age of arrests, how those are trending over time. Now, if we click on integrity, we have a completely different metric. In this case, looking at how different stakeholders perceived trust as it relates to the different issues that we're trying to analyze. So, if we go back to our analysis, what we found on the previous dashboard was that in this scenario, the issue of racial bias is a very volatile and that the National Criminal Justice Association is a very influential stakeholder. So let's drill down and look at the issue of racial bias and see which other stakeholder groups are associated with that issue. So as you can see, we have the four quadrants: external, low intensity; external, high intensity; internal, high intensity; and internal, low intensity. So if we drill down, for example, in the external high intensity stakeholders, let's look at the associations. Here, we see a list of all the stakeholders that are part of that group called associations, and the first group, of course, is the National Criminal Justice Association. We can drill into this record of the association, and we can do all sorts of interactions. We can log a call, we can send a direct email, we can see the different contacts for the organization, as well as all the different interactions and issues that the organization is concerned with. Now, let's plan a campaign. So if I go back to my knowledge map, and I open campaigns, I can create a new campaign and call it Seattle Q4. So I can create the campaign and call it Seattle Q4. And let's say that this is going to end by the end of December. Now, once I have these groups, I can go here and say, okay, from all the different groups that I have, which ones do I want to engage in this particular campaign? So we know that associations is a critical stakeholder group. So I can drag and drop, and immediately it gives me which associations do you want to engage with. So let's say we select these three. And then we're also going to invite to this campaign non-governmental organizations who are closely linked to associations according to the network analysis. Once we have created our list and we can see which stakeholders are part of those lists, we can save it, and then we basically have the ability to engage with them by sending a survey, writing emails, or sending an invitation for an in-person or a video type of engagement. So let's say that we're going to send a survey. So the survey is sent, and if I go to my email, I can see here in my inbox this email that just got to me where it says, Dear Amnesty International, we're sending this survey, please follow the link. And when we follow the link, we have an NTS, sort of a net truster score survey, so I can answer the survey, put the issues that are of concern to me, and once I have that, I can go back to my software and look at my NTS dashboard to monitor the results of this campaign. So for example, here we can see, because we're using a net truster score methodology, we can immediately see the trust score for all the different campaigns, or can drill down to a specific one. We can see that the main themes that people are talking about, what are called the theme buckets. We can also see the survey delivery, how many surveys were sent, how many were open, what's the monthly trend, and other statistics that can help us monitor and control the engagement in a more proactive manner. So, to recap, the system enables police departments to combine closely interlinked communication technologies like social media analysis and social network analysis, and then it provides the capability to integrate that data with a system of engagement based on being able to segment stakeholders according to groups and dimensions of trustworthiness. The result is a strategic tool that can help departments become more proactive with their communities and make informed decisions. This concludes the demonstration. Thank you for your time.